Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the second episode of my Artist Talk series. It's a series where I sit down with other artists and creators and have a candid conversation about their artwork and also their journey as an artist. And in today's episode, I sit down with Amy Williams. Now, if you haven't seen already, I created a mini documentary on Amy Williams, her journey as an artist, and getting to know her a little bit more. Now, this artist talk is essentially a supplement to that video. It goes a lot more in depth into her story, and we also dive into a lot of great details that just didn't make it into the final cut of the documentary. And so I definitely recommend listening to this podcast style video. If you're an artist yourself, I find that you'll find this extremely inspiring. And if you're a fan of Amy Williams' work, you'll also really enjoy learning more about her. It was really exciting. I had a blast, talking with her and having this conversation, but also re-listening to it now. It's just full of inspiration and just lights the creative fires within me. And so, yeah, just want to share it with everyone else. And without further ado, let's dive right into the conversation with Amy Williams.
Like, how'd you get into being an artist and all that?
Well, I've always loved art. Like ever since I was a kid, I would paint and draw, and all my projects at school would be, highly decorated, and then the actual piece would be very poor, but I made it look pretty. But it was during COVID, and my kids everybody was home, online learning, and I'm a trained teacher, and I haven't taught it's been quite a while now. And I just thought, I can't go back to where I can't teach right now. Like, there's no way. How can my husband teaches? So he's in one room teaching. I've got my daughter, she was in grade 2 at the time. She's in her room doing online learning. And then I have 3 kindergarten boys running around the house. Like, how could I be also in a room teaching? That's not going to happen. And so I thought, I'm going to start painting. And if something comes from it, great. And so I started with actually these building portraits of downtown places. Mm-hmm. And I just went down. I remember we were in a lockdown, and I walked down Queen Street, and I was taking photos of all the places that I liked, the ones that had some curb appeal. And I just started to draw them, sketch them out, paint them. And my husband was like, whoa, oh, I didn't know you could do that. I was like, I didn't know I could do that either. Yeah. Oh, interesting. So I did about, 6 or 7. And then I posted them on social media. Yeah. I put them on this support local Facebook group. Mm-hmm. And people were like, these are so awesome. Like, I just wanted to bolster some pride and enthusiasm for our dwindling downtown, during this lockdown. And it was within an hour of posting these that I had other businesses reaching out, and I had people reaching out about, could you do this to my house? Could you paint my house? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh. And by the end of the day, I all of a sudden had a job because I had about 20 requests. I thought, oh, okay. Wow. Okay. So it literally happened, not even overnight, like within hours. That's wild, and so I started doing those, and I would just post them, and people would be like, these are amazing, what a great keepsake. And then I had some realtors start reaching out, and like, these people have been living in this house for 50 years, they're selling it, could you draw this for them? And I'm like, okay, this is, I could do this. But then after probably 6 months of that, I was like, this is getting hard. This is getting really difficult because they're really intricate, they're very detailed, and really, how much can I charge for these? So I started raising my prices a little bit. And then I thought, okay, I'm really loving creating things, making things. And I thought, I've always been interested in stained glass. Like, I wonder if I can start making some stained glass. Like, I grew up in a church with all these beautiful stained glass windows. And so I started looking on Amazon for kits, and I'm like, okay, it's not that expensive. And then I watched a YouTube clip on how to actually make stained glass, and I was like,
Yeah.
no, I'm going to burn myself, cut myself, set the house on fire. Like, there's no way. I've got all these little kids running around. Somebody's going to get hurt. And then I thought, how can I recreate stained glass in a way that I kind of already know how? And so this is where that my acrylic style was born, the idea of stained glass. And yeah, right away, the very first painting that I did in that style was the Ego Tour train.
Okay.
Wow. The very first painting.
Okay.
And then I posted that to social media, and I had actually reached out to Tourism Sault Ste. Marie because I used their photo as a reference. And I just said, before I painted it, actually, I said, I'd really love to paint this. Can I use your permission? Can I have your permission to use it? They're like, yeah, go for it. And so I said, I'll tag you in it when it's finished. And so I did. And Tourism Sault Ste. Marie was like, this is pretty awesome. Yeah, and within a couple of days, they said, Amy, we have an idea.
Yeah.
Would you be okay if we, paid you, but could we use this for the cover of our tourism, the 35,000 copies that go out so their official tourism guide.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah, of course. That's really awesome. So the very first painting that I did in that style was, in my mind, it was already a hit.
Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, people like this. People like this style. They like that I've captured something local. And then from there, I said, okay, what are the places in Sault Ste. Marie that people hold near and dear? And then I started painting all of the places that, are so familiar to us and to people traveling up here, the ones that, connect people really to their memories. And I just rolled with it. And now I have about 40 paintings in my Algoma landscape series, all places that, people visit and they take their kids to, their family to, and where they have their best memories. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I have that pamphlet at home on my coffee table.
Yeah.
Not the pamphlet. I get the tourism guide.
The tourism guide, yeah.
And honestly, I didn't know that was your first one. I thought, like, after you did a whole bunch, they came out to you and commissioned you to make the cover of it.
No.
But for that to be the first one, wow, that's incredible. And I mean, it goes to show, like, when you create something that's so connected to a specific region or place where a lot of people connect to, like, it'll really speak to a lot of people, which clearly that's kind of what happened in your case there.
It definitely happened. And I still, I have a list of places that I still want to paint, but I'm always looking for, inspiration for places that mean something to people. Like, people have to connect with a piece of art in order to buy it, right? They have to be like, okay, this is where, Grandpa used to take me fishing every summer. We used to sit on that rock, and when I'm able to capture those places, it's, I don't know, it's pretty special. And so a lot of people will, when I get commissions, it's a specific photograph of a specific place. They say, in your style, and then this is going to be this. It means so much to me. And then I get the story of, almost every single time I get the story of why I'm painting this for these people. And I always like to say that I paint in a recognizable but non-realistic way. People know, looking at my paint, oh, that's Searchmont, but but does it look like a ski hill? I mean, yeah, but it's wild, vibrant colors, and I try to capture the essence of a place through the colors that I pick.
Through your own style and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So you started off with the watercolor
Mm-hmm.
paintings, and you said you had like a ton of commissions from that right off the bat, right?
Yeah, right off that, and then I painted something specific that really got the attention of a lot of local people, local businesses.
Mm-hmm.
When they first found all those Indigenous graves
Mm-hmm.
in Kelowna, and the memorial on the steps of Algoma University went up, I took a photo of that, and I took my kids, and I painted it, because that is what, that was my tribute to all these little souls. And I never, ever, ever, ever intended for anything to happen with it, only to maybe bring some awareness. Never any like financial gain from it whatsoever. But after I painted this and I posted it on social media, just on my own social media, just saying like, we need to do better, remembering, I wrote a little tribute, and right away people were like, can I buy this? Can I buy this? Can I buy this? I'm like, no, like I am not selling this piece. Like, I cannot make money from this. Like, I felt sick to my stomach. And then a light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, whoa, why don't I make prints of this piece and run a fundraiser? And I just asked for a minimum donation of $5 per print. But I want to make sure that my costs were covered, and anything else that I collected that I was going to donate to the Shingwalk Residential School Center. And that took over my life for about a month.
I can imagine, yeah.
I mean, I don't think viral is not really the word, but like locally, yes.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And people would, and it was the height of COVID, right? So I had Outspoken, actually, they had a big stack of them at their place. And I said, this is a public place you can go to, make a donation there. They said, or you want to come to my house, you can come to my house. And I just had like contactless pickup, and I was always home. So, I would collect money, but it raised about $8,000 for the Shingwalk Residential School Center. And people were really generous. Some people could only give $5, but that's why I put that minimum. Like, they want to feel like they're helping, and to get this artwork. And but some people would donate $50. And so then I was able to transfer all that money, or drop off all that money at the university. And
that's amazing,
we all felt really, really kind of helpless at the time, and just like,
there was so
dark.
much going on
during
that time.
It was dark.
Yeah.
It was a dark time.
Yeah.
But there was like, I was on CBC News and on Sault Today and on the radio, and like, I just felt very weird about all of it. But it really did create a lot of awareness. And Algoma University uses that piece constantly. Anytime they have anybody visiting, they give them a framed piece of that.
That's awesome.
That memorial piece I did. Yeah, so that caught the attention of Algoma Steel. So Algoma Steel reached out to me in the same month that this was all going on, and they said, "Hey, Amy, we recognized your the work that you're doing, and we have a project for you if you're interested." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "But I can't tell you too much about it. I'm going to send you a picture, and I'm hoping you could paint it for me. We need some prints, and everything needs to be framed up nice." I said, "Okay." And I'm like, I have so much to do, but it's Algoma Steel, like the biggest company,
biggest employer.
Yeah. So I said, I can't say no.
Yeah.
And so she sent me this metallurgy furnace picture, and it was, this industrial piece of equipment, and I have no idea what I'm like, oh, okay, I have to do this. Okay. So I painted it and I put all the labels. I did everything that she wanted on it. And and she said, I need this by Thursday. And it was like
Oh, boy.
Saturday. And I was like, I can do it. And so she comes Thursday morning, and I have the original all framed up, and I have 7 prints all framed up. And I said, here you go. She said, Amy, I'm like so grateful for you to, you've worked so hard to get this done. She said, I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the rush and why. And she said, but later this morning, this is going to be presented to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Wow.
And I was like, well, should I have known that before? Would I have done a better job? I don't know. Or would I have been worried about everything? So,
yeah, for sure.
So yeah, they took a risk on me, and
that's incredible.
now I have a really great working relationship with them, and I do a lot of projects for them, which
that's
is
awesome.
Yeah, which is great, which is really great.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that all happened. I started painting in March. That was all in June, and then I started painting like the Agua tour train. I painted that in the fall.
Okay.
So this was all early 2021, and then the tour guide was the summer of 2022.
I see.
And then
Okay.
Yeah, busy.
Wow,
and raising all the kids, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about, I guess, well, before we go into like your home life, so what was the transition like between the watercolor paintings to your acrylic paintings? Like, was there something like, obviously you said the stained glass windows, but was there something that prompted that change in direction?
I think I was just getting so tired of doing these watercolor and ink pieces, and I just wanted a change. And I didn't want to get into oil paint. I have definitely dabbled in it, but I thought, you know what? I love how quickly acrylic dries. Like I'm just gonna, and I happened to be in the old Winners, and there was a box of cheap paint right at the checkout.
Right.
And I was like, let's just try it.
Let's just see what
Let's
happens.
just see what happens.
Yeah.
And then that painting came out. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I still have some of those crappy paints. They're like these Montmartre. So
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
they were like the catalyst to that. Just a random impulse purchase.
Yeah, and they were on sale. I had a red ticket on it. They were like $14.99 for like 30 of these, and I was like, okay.
You're like, yeah,
we'll give it a go.
Let's try it.
Yeah. So yeah.
And once you tried it,
I was hooked.
Yeah.
I was hooked. Yeah.
Do you find that was there quite a bit of a difference between when you first did the watercolor,
as far as like technique goes,
or like, I guess, how you explain that you got hooked on it, like you got excited over it? Was it at a different level, same level?
Oh yeah, or no, way different level.
Okay.
Especially getting the response, almost like a validation, after posting on social media and then having the city reach out and being like, okay, like I like the piece that I painted, but other people do too. And so, and I think also I could paint more, like I could paint a bigger surface in less time. And so I was painting bigger and bigger, and I was like, okay, this is way more satisfying, than a little, house portrait or whatever.
Yeah. And so, so it was a lot more exciting. Were you afraid? Like, I guess on social media, I imagine you've built up a little bit of a reputation of these portraits, like house portraits, buildings. Were you afraid to like post something completely different onto this platform, or were you just like, whatever, I
think I didn't really understand the idea of having like a niche market at that time. And as an artist, to develop a style that people recognize you for. And I think I was just like blissfully unaware that people, oh, they know me for these house portraits. Well, am I going to stun them into, something? Am I going to lose followers? I didn't, at that time, I was so like not paying attention to social media in that way, like, thinking of it as my number one marketing tool. It wasn't really that at that point. So no, I wasn't. I was like, I am just hopeful people like it. And then, and if they don't, well, that's
whatever.
Yeah. Like, I'm not worried about people like abandoning my Instagram page.
Right. Yeah, because you're still pretty new, because you're
I only have a couple hundred followers, and
6 months in.
Yeah.
So you're not like,
I didn't care,
too struck in one niche or whatever.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
But now, I'm not afraid to paint in any other style or medium. I have some other ideas like that I do want to bring forward that will be slight diversion from what I've been doing, and I'm totally okay with that. And people either like it or not like it, and that's fine. That's totally fine. But I'm learning now that as an artist, to have a recognizable style is actually a pretty cool thing. And for people to walk by and say, oh, that's an Amy Williams. I recognize that, which is now the case, which is really, really cool.
That is awesome.
People can say like, oh, that's got to be an Amy Williams. Actually, I was picking up one of my kids for an appointment at the school the other day, and a little boy in grade 5 comes up to me. He goes, are you Amy Williams? And I said, yeah, I am. He goes, I could pick out your paintings anywhere. He said, my mom loves them. He says, nice. I love them too. You're the best artist I know. And I was like, oh, like validation from a child. It's like the holy grail, right? So yeah, it was cool.
That's pretty incredible.
It was like getting the nerve to talk to me. Like, yeah. I'm like, all right.
That's cute.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now that you've been doing this for like the acrylic paintings, how many years now, would you say?
3? That's it? No, it's gotta be end of 2021. So yeah, 3 and a bit.
Awesome. Like, how is your relationship with that? Are you still
loving it?
Like from the first piece that you did?
There are moments where I question what I'm doing. I'm like, why have I turned this into something that is now so detailed? Because now the details that I put in the hills or the trees or, is definitely more than what it was before, or, creating the composition is more intricate. And no, I definitely really, and I still have so many ideas. No, I still really enjoy it, but I am, like I said, I do have other ideas that I kind of might want to pursue when I have a little extra time.
Okay.
And like with oil paint,
okay.
I do want to venture into landscapes, but in my style, in a different medium.
What do you think, like, where does that come from? Where do you think that?
I think part of it is wanting to be taken seriously by the art world.
Oh, okay.
And to be an oil painter, I mean, there's a difference, obviously, between those who paint acrylics, those who paint in oils, and the techniques. But in so many, I don't want to say like a gallery is going to take you more seriously if you paint in oil, but sometimes I feel like that's true. Okay. So I don't know. I just want to see what else I'm capable of in a medium that is more difficult to control.
Interesting.
In my opinion, yeah.
I don't know much about the fine art world personally.
I'm learning.
Yeah, same here. And you know, I think I resonate with you as well, as you just kind of went with the flow and just did what we wanted to do.
Yeah. I still am, but
you know, yeah, exactly. So I guess you're more into that space. You've been in several different galleries now. I've had several different exhibitions. So what's that world like from your perspective?
It really depends. Depends on the gallery, depends on the gallerist, curator, depends on its reputation. There's so many different aspects. I currently would love to be represented somewhere in Southern Ontario.
Okay.
And we'll make that happen one day. But right now, like I've had to go a little further out. I do have representation in New York City, not with a typical gallery though. It's like with a design agency, and they have various showrooms and exhibition spaces. So I've been successful down there. They've sold a handful of stuff, which is great. But it's not like your typical white wall gallery. We have they have different show spaces. They've got a cafe. I had a piece in a fashion show and during Fashion Week when I painted on a leather jacket, which was really, really cool. And then I have representation right now in Europe, but the difference is like I've had to pay to get all my stuff shipped there, and then they're representing me at a fair in Paris, and I've had to pay for that spot. So the difference between just getting in somewhere in Southern Ontario is they take a nice solid chunk of commission, but you don't really have to pay ahead of time. Whereas something like what I'm doing in Europe, I've paid. I'm like, please sell my work because I don't want to have to pay to ship it home.
Right.
Right. But I'm just kind of resume building, to get these experiences to show some of these other bigger galleries in Southern Ontario that, yeah, I'm serious. Like, please.
Right. Okay.
Take a chance on me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm really fortunate, really, really fortunate that I have a husband who teaches full time and he does real estate on the side, and I don't have to worry so much about making sure that the mortgage is paid, and like I have put in my time. I have raised triplets and had a singleton, and like he is super happy to be supporting me in this dream. And yeah, there are some months that are better than others, but like I'm definitely on the plus side.
That's
you know
good.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah. So I don't know where that question came from. Sorry, where that information just came from. I don't know.
It's natural. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So touching back a bit on the galleries again.
Yes.
So why do you want to be represented in galleries? Is there?
I feel like up here, like we don't have a commercial gallery. I just actually got my some prints and some really small original pieces in the art gallery of Algoma, but they just have the gift shop, right? They don't have a commercial gallery space. They don't have a space where they have $3,000-$4,000 paintings for sale by local people. Like that, it doesn't exist here. But it exists all over the place in Southern Ontario.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a challenge to be living where we live. And I feel I don't want to saturate the market here. Like I've had a lot of commissions. I have a lot of, I could even say I have collectors here, who have several pieces of my work. But when I'm just worried, when is it going to dry up? Like we have a decent sized city, but all the people who continue to support me is fantastic, but I just don't want to saturate the market here and then be really frustrated because nobody's buying because they've already bought. Right? So being able to have the opportunity to sell in a city that I'm not from, where people don't know me, where my work would just have to speak for itself. I always wondered, did that person buy that painting from me because they know me and they want to support me and my family, or because they really, really love it? Right? So
that's interesting thought process.
Yeah. I don't necessarily need to seek out that validation, but it would be good.
So are you going to different regions and places? Are you changing, I guess, your artwork or
to suit that place?
Yeah, exactly.
I would. Yeah, I certainly would. I've only applied to a couple places and I haven't heard anything back. I will
in Southern Ontario.
I will wear them down. I will. But I mean, like when I went to Elliott Lake, I painted a couple specific spots for that, event, and I made prints, and they sold well. So I'm thinking that either people are really going to appreciate the Lake Superior aspect that I have, or paint a handful of pieces that represent the area that they're from. Right? And they're like, I recognize that. Oh, I love that spot. Whatever. I don't know. I just need to stay true to me, but also want to sell my art. Right? It's a hard toss up, but
so that's interesting. Yeah. So how's the transition, I guess, from just painting for fun to becoming an entrepreneur with it and a business owner as an artist?
It's a challenge for somebody who, like me, is very type B personality in my organization, in my record keeping, in my bookkeeping. Thankfully, my husband is very on the ball. He does so much. I would probably just have a stack of receipts shoved in a jar somewhere, but they're all, in a folder, and I probably wouldn't even have thought to keep them. But I think the hardest thing that I have a problem with is not that, because he gladly takes that on, like the whole budget of the household, the whole, expenses and income of the whole household. And he just takes my business under that, and every month does a budget, every month does our expenses and what I spend and what I make versus. So thank God he does that. I would be a bookkeeper's nightmare. I am my husband's nightmare when it comes to this. But anyway, where I struggle and where I could be making more money is my website. I don't update it ever. If I do, I pat myself on the back. It's not hard. To update a Shopify website is not difficult at all. And I have so many things hanging around that are not uploaded on my website, where I could be like, oh, that could have been sold. Maybe somebody would want that. I'll never know because I'll never put it on there.
That's funny. Yeah, I can relate to that. For some reason, it's the last thing that I dread doing is I've got to make a new listing, put new photos, write descriptions, but it's not that hard, really. You can just,
it's not,
if you're for example, for prints, you just duplicate something, change the pictures, and you're done. In reality, it only takes maybe 15 minutes of your time.
Yeah.
From start to finish. But But I hear you on that. It's one of the things like, oh, I don't feel like doing that.
No, I don't
And
feel like
it's-
doing it today. And then
Yeah.
8 months have passed.
Yes. You put it on the back burner and then it really just like, yeah.
Yeah, I know. That's so transitioning from, say I'm working on a piece. I don't do really anything else until that piece is done.
Mm-hmm.
Then I finish that piece, and then, no, I don't put it on my website. I just finish it, and then it sits somewhere, unless it's a commission.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, I'll be like, okay, what's the next one? My husband's like, don't you have like, where's the administration? Where's the invoice for that piece with your HST number on it? I'm like, oh, I don't know. What are you talking about? Like, where's the adult in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
It's not me.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just love to make art.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make art all the time, and then it magically sell. And you know what? If I post it on my Instagram, half the time that's what happens.
It sells through Instagram.
Through Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's probably why also I'm like terrible with my website, because I'm like, well, hopefully someone will just buy it from my Instagram if I post it. This is for sale.
Well, your Instagram is another tool that you could use.
Yeah.
If sometimes it works better than the website by itself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really depends. You can also use Instagram to drive traffic to your website, as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if it works, it works,
right?
You know, you just got to do whatever works in that way, and yeah.
Lately, it's been I haven't painted anything for myself. I had an exhibition back in September, and so I painted whatever I wanted to paint for that, which was great. That exhibition was fantastic. But then Christmas, I was painting ornaments, hundreds of ornaments.
Okay,
and those sold really, really well. Like,
nice.
I don't have any. Like, I made over 200.
Wow.
And they all, which was incredible. I'm like, what am I going to do next year? I'm going to make more ornaments, but it can't be the same.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. And then January, February have been commissions, which is really great. January, February, and March are so tough. I feel like as any business, you know, they're usually pretty quiet in that first quarter, right?
Yeah.
But luckily I've had some stuff come in, you know, and it's just been great timing. Great timing.
Oh, for sure.
So if anybody needs a commission, ask me in January, because I will happily do it.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess let's kind of go back. You've mentioned your family quite a bit.
They're a big part of my life.
Yeah. What's it like being a mother, a wife, and being a full-time artist?
So I often say that the timing of everything happened as it should have. Like I said, I was a teacher before, and my husband and I were teaching abroad when I got pregnant with our daughter. So that was 2013, she was born. And we were living in Beijing. And we thought, do we want to have a baby in China? Probably not. So we came back to Canada, really like, we were expats, and then coming home, we felt this, even like a culture shock coming back home, right? And we bumped around for a while. We lived out west. She was born on the East Coast, and we ended up in Barrie. And we thought, you know, like, we're still very unsettled. Even at that time, it was still a really hard time to get a teaching position. And my husband was just on a supply list. He had done his real estate, and we were just going through the motions, getting through. And we thought, okay, well, if we're here, we're gonna have 2 kids. Like, that's it. Let's get that done. So, wasn't happening. And we thought, okay, whatever, it'll happen when it's supposed to. So in the meantime, should we go back to Beijing? Should we go back to China? Our jobs are there for us. We don't feel at home in Canada. We feel very unsettled. So we started talking with our school again. They said, yeah, we'd love to have you January, because it was October by this time. And it was like, after we had that conversation, I looked at my husband and I said, I feel pregnant. He's like, what? He's like, right now? I'm like, yeah. Like all of a sudden, I don't feel normal. Sure enough, I take a pregnancy test. Boom, I'm pregnant. I'm like, okay, what are we gonna do? And so we thought, do we go? Do we have this baby, the second baby in China? And I'm like, I don't know. We were really now confused.
Right.
And then at 10 weeks, like I'm showing already, and I'm like, weird.
Yeah.
They say that your stomach pops much sooner with your second baby. So that's all I thought it was.
Right.
And then towards the end of October, I went for my ultrasound, and this is a 12-week ultrasound now. It's the first time I had a midwife, and I was really sick, really sick. And I go, and this is my second baby, right? I'm not worried. I'm not, I feel really off. I don't feel great, and we're just chatting away, and then she gets really, really quiet. And there's lots of clicking, and I don't think anything of it. And then the words pop out of my mouth. I'm like, there's just one in there, right? And she has her hand covering her mouth, and she's like,
oh boy.
No. I'm like, twins? I'm like, I can't have twins. And then she goes like this. I'm like, what? She's like, there's 3. And I was like, oh, what? And I just started crying. And my husband and daughter, my daughter's only 2, they're out in the waiting room. And she's like, at this poor technician, boy. She's like, oh my gosh. She said, I wasn't going to tell you, but you asked. And I'll go get your husband. What's his name? And I'm like, the tall guy. I don't know. And he comes in and he's like, did we lose the baby? And she looks at him. She goes, no. She said, you're having triplets. And he was like,
oh boy.
He goes, well, good thing we already have a minivan. I'm like, oh my God. He goes, why are you crying? I'm like, well, this is happening to us, but this is happening to me. Like, anyway, long story short, we end up back in Sault Ste. Marie, because this is where I'm from.
And is it also where your husband's from too?
No, or? He's from New Brunswick.
Oh, okay.
He's from Fredericton. We weren't going all the way out there. I needed my mommy. Yeah. So we were here, and he got on the supply list while I was pregnant, and then the babies came early, 3 at once. You don't tend to go full term, but these guys were quite premature. They were 12 weeks premature. So I ended up being medevaced in labor to Mount Sinai Hospital. We held off labor for about a day, and then they're like, they're your littlest one is like, they have to come out. They're coming. So, okay, here we go. And then that led into a 3-month NICU stay for 2 of the boys. And then after 3 months in Toronto, they were transferred back here. So I flew with them. My parents had come and gotten our dog. We'd been living at Ronald McDonald House right next to the hospital. And my parents came and got our daughter, and I flew back with Bryce and Connor. And then my littlest guy, Theo, he had a very rough go. He was a 1 pound, 13 ounce baby. And the other 2 were significantly bigger. He had to stay. He wasn't ready to transfer. So he stayed at Mount Sinai for another month. So my husband was in Toronto at Ronald McDonald House and Theo was at Mount Sinai. And then I was at home going to the hospital for all day, every day, sometimes bringing my daughter, sometimes not, where Bryce and Connor were just almost ready to go home, but not quite. So then after about a week, Connor was able to come home. And then after 2 weeks, Bryce came home. And then the next week, Theo was transferred back to this hospital. So at one point in time, I had one baby in the hospital in Toronto. I had one baby in the hospital here, and I had one baby at home with my 2-year-old
Wow.
at my parents' house, because we had moved into with my parents, because how else were we going to do this? So that was the point where I was like, okay, my life is going to significantly change. It already had significantly. But yeah, then Bryce came home, and then eventually Theo came home, and Theo came home on oxygen, and then stopped eating and had to go back in the hospital, and he had surgery for a G-tube place, so that's a gastrostomy tube. And so Theo started taking all his feeds through his tummy, not his mouth, because he had such horrific reflux. So my job was keeping these babies alive, literally keeping them alive. There was no room for anything else. There was not, like, I showered once a week. I didn't even know what I looked like. I had no idea. But so they were born in February. We brought the two, Bryce and Connor, home in May. Theo came home in June, and then he was back at Sick Kids Hospital in August. And then we ended up buying a house 2 streets over from my parents. And my husband and his father renovated it. And then October 30th, we moved in. And at that time, I didn't have any more help. I didn't, my mom was still very available, but she was still working. And I was full-time mom, medical caregiver, trying to be there for my daughter, who has had her world ripped apart from her. And then my husband worrying about, okay, finally getting a job, teaching, right? And starting to do real estate on the side. And he was coaching and just trying to get a foot in the door. And eventually it all worked out. My boys just celebrated their 9th birthday a couple days ago.
Nice.
And when I look back, I'm like, if I had been a serious artist before I met my husband, before I had a child, before I had these other 3, I don't know that I would have gotten married or had children, because I would have devoted my life to my craft. I would have. And so I'm so grateful that it worked out in the way that it did, because I wouldn't be painting the happy things that I paint if not for the experiences that I've had. And going through a really dark, it's not dark, but like, my kids, they fought for their lives, really. Like, all of them, we said goodbye to all of them at one point because they were so sick. And but we came out, and that has given me such a different perspective on life, and just the gratitude that I have for them being here and us all being together. It's a miracle. It really is. So it shines through in the colors that I choose. So when I say it's intuitive, it's like, what is happy? What's a happy color? Because that's what's coming out. Yeah. Yeah, but like, looking back at that, I'm like, I'm grateful for the experience, but would I ever wish it upon my worst enemy? No. No.
It seems like definitely a challenging time, and
like,
to say the least.
Yeah.
I can only imagine. I can't imagine at all what that would be like. And and so did you, I don't know if you mentioned earlier, but did you do a lot of like painting and art for fun before when you were younger, before you had a family?
When I lived in the UK, I taught art full-time at a private preparatory school. I just don't know how I got that job, but I did. And I loved it. It was amazing.
Mhm.
So I didn't paint for fun, but I painted examples of stuff that we were going to make. Or so that is when I kind of realized, okay, no, I really do enjoy this. But it was just for that 1 year, and then
Yeah.
we moved to the Middle East, and I was teaching phys ed. So that's what I was doing. I was playing soccer, and I was swimming, and I was teaching swimming, and doing all these different things just related to my job. And then in China, I was teaching kindergarten. So there wasn't a lot of time there for personal pursuits. Plus, I'm living in a city where I'm like, I don't know the first thing about finding any art supplies here. Like, I
In a
don't.
foreign country, yeah.
And I didn't know I loved it as much as I do. I didn't know. As a kid, I loved it, but I was mostly just drawing and never really
As
painted.
kids do,
Yeah. I loved it. But I was, doing school and music lessons and
all the different extracurriculars.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, no, it wasn't until and then traveling. I'm traveling. I'm experiencing like all these awesome places, and I'm diving off of sailboats. I'm not painting. Yeah, I'm lots of physical stuff, right?
Yeah.
Lots of food and drink, and plus I was so transient, right? So I'm not
very nomadic.
Yeah, not collecting paintbrushes and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I didn't realize it was missing. I didn't realize it was missing from my life. And now I'm like, well,
you can't imagine your life without it.
No, people know me now. I was Amy the triplets mom. I still am to a lot of people, but now somebody referred to me as Amy the artist.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah,
I
am. I'm still a triplets mom, but I like how that has replaced.
For sure.
People know me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you traveled quite a bit then. From Europe, Middle East.
Yeah, I think I've been to 36 countries.
Cool. And where did that come from? You just...
You know what? When I was 20 years old, well, before that, I met a guy and his girlfriend. I was working at actually the Ramada Inn, which is the Best Western, which is now Quattro. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
In the pool when the water slide was on. Do you remember the water slide? I don't know if you remember. There was
that's before I'd been here.
Okay, well, they had to have lifeguards and I lifeguarded all my teen years, right? So I was lifeguarding at the pool, and I met this American guy and his girlfriend, and
like they were guests.
Yep, they were guests, hotel guests. I talked to everybody, you know.
Yeah.
And I said, she said, "Hey, how's it going?" And really thick, like Southern Michigan accent, and then she has an accent that I've never heard before, and I'm like, "Okay, tell me, what are you guys doing here?" I said, "Well, we wanted to come to Canada." So we just drove over the border, and here we are. I was like, okay.
That happens a lot.
Yeah. So he was from Grand Rapids, and she was from South Africa.
Okay, yeah.
And I said, how did you two meet? And they said, well, we both work for Carnival Cruise Lines. And I was like, cool. And in my head, I'm like, ding, ding, like.
You can be a lifeguard on a car or on a cruise.
So I thought, okay. So I kept in touch with them. They ended up breaking up, and then he quit Carnival, and he got a job with the U.S. Border Patrol. And I'm 21 at this time. No, 20. And he says to me, I know your parents live on the border, and I was I living with my parents? Yeah, at the time I was. He said, you live on the border. Said, I got a job at the Sault Ste. Marie Border Patrol. He said, I don't have a place yet, and I start on Monday. Can I stay at your parents' house? And he was like 10 years older than me, and I was like,
interesting.
Mom! and then I'm like, what? How can I use this to my advantage? And so I said, let me call you back. And I talked to my mom. I said, he needs a place to stay for like a month while he finds a place in Sioux, Michigan. And my parents live in a big old Victorian house with, there was lots of space. And she's like, well, he could have the third floor. And I said, I want a job on a cruise ship. Do you think like this is a good way for him to help me? And she's like, probably. So I called him back and I said, okay, Brent, I said, you can stay with my parents if you get me a job with Carnival. He goes, done. And I was like, okay. He said, this is what you need to do. So I just put together a little resume, a photo, and at the time, we weren't emailing anything. So he said, mail this to this address, to Carnival headquarters in Miami. And I got a phone call about 3 weeks later. And they said, hi, Amy, this is so-and-so. When would you like to start? No interview, no nothing.
Oh, wow.
And I was like,
yeah.
And I was in college. I was taking resort operations at Sioux College.
Okay. Fitting, yeah.
Yeah. And it was beginning of March. School ended beginning of April.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, we have an opening March 28th on the Carnival Elation. And it's such a small ship now. It's probably dry dock too. And I was like, I'll take it. So I go to my professors and I say, look, I got this job offer. Like, I'm going to go. They're like, what about your exams? I'm like, can I just do them early? I will just do everything early. Just let me go. And so, yeah, because I had to do what's the word? I had to do a placement. So that was going to be my summer placement. I was going to be on the cruise ship. So they were super supportive. Off I went. And I had never really been anywhere before that. Never. And here I was, 20 years old, not even legal drinking age. And flying into Houston and then cab to Galveston and hop on my ship by myself, no cell phone, no nothing, no directions, no. Wow. And I'm like, here I go. And I made it. That's what started it. Wow. That's what started the travel bug, because then I did 3 contracts with them, like between my years at school. And I was all through the Caribbean, all through Central America, Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, all these places. Wow. And I was like, man, this is cool. Pretty awesome. Yeah. And then after my 3rd contract, I was like, I'm getting tired. And I was like seasick all the time, which was not great. But I ended up coming back home, and I went to Laurentian for my undergrad. And then I went to York for Teachers College. And I was actually dating a Polish pilot. Told you about this guy. And and so that, there was some travel there too, right? We went to Mexico for the weekend because we could, and went to Poland for the weekend. Like, it was crazy. For the weekend. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, wild. It cost $4. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That was the only upside to that relationship anyway. And then I broke up with him when I was in Teachers College, and I was homeless and living on couches trying to finish my degree. And then I graduated, and then I went back to my parents' house in Sault Ste. Marie, and I'm like, oh my God, I need to figure something out. I had been rejected from every school board in Ontario.
Wow.
They were not taking anybody. So I thought, and I was on Applied Education, and it said, come teach in London, come to the UK. I was like, dang it, I'm coming. So I looked up all this information, and I was actually at my graduation at York. Was at my convocation. It was the middle of June, end of June. And I saw that they had a Mississauga address. And I was down there, and I'm like, this was the teaching agency. So I went. I was all dressed up from graduation, and I had a resume with me, and I just walked into the office, and I said, I just graduated, and I saw your ad on Applied Education, like, come teach in the UK. And the secretary looked at me. She said, do you have an appointment? I said, no. I'm from Sault Ste. Marie. I literally just saw this. I drove over here.
Yeah.
And she said, you know what? She said, our hiring agent who recruits for the UK, she said, is on vacation. She said, but he's actually in the office just picking something up. Let me see if he'll talk to you. And so sure enough, 2 minutes later, he goes, "Hi, Amy, come on in." And by the end of it, he was helping me apply for my visa.
That is so cool.
And then mid-August, I moved to the UK.
Wow.
And I had nothing. I was so broke. I had a suitcase and I didn't know where I was going. I had no idea, nothing. Like, I didn't know what I didn't know. And I had to get my mom to add me to her bank account because you had to get a visa, you had to prove you had like $3,000 or something. And I didn't have that. I had like 300. And, but those first couple months that I was there, I have never been so free in my whole life. Like, the teaching agency had found me a place to live. I lived with an old lady named Mrs. Wilson, and there were some other teachers staying there as well. And I just learned the city. I got a job bartending in the evenings at a pub just outside of Greenwich Park. And then I was taking supply jobs through the agency that had hired me. And so they would call me up. They say, "Amy, are you free to work today?" I'd be like, "Yes." And then they would send me, "Here's the address, be there by 8:30. It's like 7:15 in the morning. And it's like way out in wherever. And I've got my A to Z book, which shows all the maps, all the roads in London. And okay, you need to go find this place, and you're teaching year 2. And I would just be like, oh, some days I would show up drenched in sweat because I've had to run because I missed this bus, or the subway or the tube wasn't running, or like, and it was just like, and then I would just do a supply day, and it might be the worst day teaching I had ever had. And then I was like, I'm never going back there. There are thousands of schools in that region. So, but yeah, every break I had, I traveled.
Nice.
Every single one. If I didn't eat that week so that I could afford to go, to France or to Scotland or to, Netherlands, then I wouldn't eat. I would go. That's why another reason why I got a job at the pub. It's like, I know I'll get a free meal every night. I was so broke. I was so broke. Yeah. It was awesome. Cool. Yeah.
Wow. What a story. That's amazing.
It just didn't stop after that. That's where I met my husband.
Yeah. How did you meet your husband then?
So he was also same situation. Couldn't find a teaching job in Canada. He had gone to the UK a year before me. And he had a full-time job there. We met at the
pub?
At the Maple Leaf pub in Covent Garden. Oh. So the Maple Leaf is a Canadian pub.
Okay.
So lots of Canadians hang out there, right? Cool. Not necessarily that I was looking for a Canadian, but found one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we dated for a year and a bit, and then we got engaged, and then another year, and then we got married, and then we decided to leave England. He worked in a really rough school. If I could have stayed there till now, I'd still be there. I love that place so much. And so we decided, let's go to the Middle East. Let's make some money. And we made good money there. I paid off my entire student loan in 1 year, and we traveled on his salary. And then there for a little while, and then we decided, ready for a change. It's too hot here. And then we moved to Beijing, and then we were only in Beijing for a year, and then I got pregnant, and so then we came home, and the rest from there.
It's a full circle.
Yeah, and traveling at every school break.
Yeah.
Every holiday, every summer, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, tying back to your art, you're famous locally for creating the Algoma landscape collection that you've created, focusing on a lot of beautiful places around here. And knowing now that you have this rich past of traveling to so many different countries. Are you interested in painting some of those past experiences, or
I have
going into
a plan.
You do.
I don't know when it's gonna be able to get it into fruition, but I really would love to paint my travels. The thing is that it was long enough ago that I wasn't capturing reference photos that I typically would now. Where
you don't have a massive hard drive full
no
of photos. Yeah.
No, and I did have a beautiful camera back then. I had I still use it today actually to photograph print pieces. But looking at the photos from back then, we're smiling, dancing at the pub, or we're on the beach in Boracay, and we're hanging out in Vietnam, feeding monkeys. But did I take a picture of the beautiful vista in front of me? No. No. No, there's people in all my photos, right? Because that is what I was focused on, was my relationship and my friendships and the experiences with those people. And and then going way back to cruise ship times, I think I have 2 photos from then. It's if those memories weren't there, would it have existed? Because it wasn't documented like it is today. If I had Instagram back then, jeepers, I'd have everything. But so I think some of these places I'm going to have to revisit, or at least talk to my friends who are still abroad.
Okay.
Be like, you have any photos from way back when? Yeah. So
for your future, you are envisioning yourself painting more international landscapes. Yeah. Let's call it like that.
That would be really cool.
Yeah.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and then traveling is something you'd like to revisit again?
Absolutely. We are, like I said, headed to Paris in May, so that'll be my first European trip since
That's awesome.
2011. Oh,
which is amazing.
I can't believe it's been that long.
And you've been to Paris before, I have. Imagine? Yeah.
I have, yeah. It'll be a much different experience this time, though.
Are you bringing your whole family with you?
No.
Or is it just you?
My sister and I.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. No. No, I don't want to bring them to these art things because it will detract from my own experience, worrying about them. No, when we do take them to Europe, the focus will be on what they want to do, not what mom needs to do. So yeah, we have been discussing a European trip with them next summer. My husband has been saving all his RBC points for flights, because you can't imagine traveling with 6 people, what it costs us.
Yeah.
So either next summer or the summer after, 26, 27, and taking our kids to see the world, because that was always the plan. It was always supposed to be 2 kids, 2 parents, never outnumbered. Always, family of 4 can fit into anything. Hotel room, car. Family of 6 is a different story.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we've had to save up. Yeah. Maybe I'll paint some places specifically with the idea that this is for our family trip. Maybe I'll auction some things off. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and the cool thing about being an artist, especially a landscape artist, is you can really kind of monetize your trips in a way.
Yes. Claim
it
all.
If you're going somewhere, you have inspiration, or you're going to paint something somewhere. But knowing you, you do take your summers off, sort of.
Yeah. So, like I said, my husband teaching, the kids are all off, and then I'm I have the freedom to
So do whatever. Do you still work on your work?
Yeah.
Your artwork during that time?
What I tend to do, last summer was a bit crazy because I had an exhibition in September and I had Sylvan Valley in September. So I did paint as much as I could during the summer to prep for both of those things that were going to abruptly happen September 1st. But typically what I do is I focus on smaller original pieces that I can present for the Sylvan Circle tour, because we are in our camper, like in our trailer, pretty much all summer.
Mhm.
So I can't really paint big things in a small space like that, but I can bring a bucket of paints and I bring some small canvases or wood rounds or whatever, and it's a really great thing to paint on the beach or just paint at the campsite or when the kids go to
Nice.
bed.
Nice.
Yeah, when the
Yeah.
bugs are bad, you don't want to be outside, then I
Yeah.
can just paint. And I do still take on, I don't get a whole lot of commissions throughout the summer, but if somebody does request a house portrait, then I'm like, I could do that at the trailer. That's no big deal.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, no, summers though, I try to focus on what I want to do
Mhm.
if I can, and then give the time to my kids, you know, because we can, and it's a privilege. Like looking at
Mhm.
even my kids are like, can you imagine what do people do and their parents have to work all summer? I'm like, they have to go to daycare or they have to go to like day camps,
Yeah.
or they're like, oh man. And I'm like, I hope you realize, like, we're making this magical for you. So like appreciate it.
Yeah.
And they do. They really do. They're
Yeah.
so happy to have us around.
Mhm.
Even if they know, oh, mom's on the beach, but she's painting. It's fine, mom's there. I'm here. I'm
Mhm.
here. I might not be, throwing the football right now, but I will.
Yeah.
Give me, and they're really respectful of
Mhm.
my time and my craft. And I'll say, I need 1 hour. Will you give me 1 hour? Yes, mom. I'll give you 1 hour. Now they're at the stage where, they understand what 1 hour means. And yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Well, nice thing to have each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there has to be silver linings in
Yeah.
having triplets.
Mhm. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. Thanks for sharing
Yeah, you're welcome.
your story. I learned a lot about you
Yeah.
that I didn't know. But yeah, that's really awesome and inspiring as well.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, anything else you wanna say? You wanna share? You wanna put it out there that you didn't have a chance?
No, I think
to-
I verbally barfed it all up already.
It's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, you do great work, and
Thanks.
yeah, your career as an artist is really just beginning.
I hope so.
Quite honestly,
I hope so.
So-
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
And yeah, it's quite a journey, and excited to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, me too. Thanks.
Yeah.
Fought 1,000 times, and I'd like to think I won, but they arguably were stalemates. Feats are one on